Animating a 3D pie chart in Cinema 4D Lite is quite a bit of fun, especially when you're blurring the lines between 2D and 3D.
One of the great ways to animate multiple objects in Cinema 4D Lite is through the use of the fracture object and an effector. This will allow me to actually just move one thing around in my Cinema 4D scene and control the movement of all three of these pieces of our pie graph. So to get started, let's select layer 1 and press Command E or Control E on Windows to edit the original file. Once inside of Cinema 4D Lite, I want to place my extrude objects inside of a fracture object. So let's go up to MoGraph and go down to Fracture. Then we can draw a lasso around all three of these pieces and then click on one of them and drag up onto the fracture object until the arrow points down. Now when we select the fracture object, notice we have different channels that can kind of control what's going on. In my fracture object, the mode is set to straight. I don't have any transformations that have been applied. And if we go to the effectors section, it's empty. Let's rectify this emptiness. We'll make sure the fracture object is selected. Go to MoGraph, Effectors, Plane. Notice the second I add plane into the scene, the overall object pops up. And that's because our plane effector has a parameter that it's changing the position on the y-axis for anything that it's applied to. Well, I also want it to scale each of these pieces down to 0. So I'll enable scale, and let's make it a uniform scale. And I need it to actually be able to subtract the full value of the scale. So the full value of the scale is 1. So I'll type -1 and then press tab to move down. And now our shape has completely disappeared. But fear not, because if you select the plane object and go over to the fall off section here, you have plenty of different options for fall off. So let's click on the pull down next to shape. And I want it to actually have a box. So I'll say box. Now I can actually see my fall off. So if I hover over the y-axis handle and click and drag, notice as I drag down off of our pie chart, it's actually scaling everything all at once. I want it to kind of roll through each of the different elements as we're selecting more and more things. In order to do that, I want to select my fracture object, and under the mode, I'm going to click on the pull down and say I want to go ahead and explode segments. So now if I move the effector up and down, or I move the shape through the effector, it's actually going to transform anything that's inside this box. So here I'll press Command Z to undo that last little bit. Let's switch to a 4-up view. Now if I grab my plane effector here, I could make the overall size of the plane effector wider and taller. Now all I have to do is hover over the y-axis handle for my plane effector, and I can just change its position, and as it moves over top of my pie graph, I can go ahead and have it create animation relatively quickly and easily. And the only parameters that are going to change are going to be set up here in my parameter options. So let's go ahead and create our animation. Make sure the plane effector is all the way off of the pie graph, so it's not affecting anything at all. And then go ahead and add a keyframe. So here with my plane effector, I want to go to its coordinates, and I'll add a keyframe here right on the y-axis. Then let's move up about 20 frames, and we'll move up the plane effector on its y-axis. So here I'll just do so in the attributes panel by scrubbing up until everything disappears, and I'll add a keyframe, and then we'll just move down another 10 frames or so, add another keyframe, and then we'll move down again maybe to about frame 50 and just scrub that parameter back down like so, and then add a keyframe. Now let's go and hop back into perspective view and we can go back to the beginning of the timeline and play forwards. So I can stop playback like so. So if we want to see this reflected back into After Effects, all you have to do is save this file and it'll be automatically updated back into After Effects. Then back in After Effects, you can add any other layers around in your composition to better stylize the scene. But when it comes to actually animating the pie chart, if you just use the fracture object and a plane effector, you can change just about any parameter required to build your pie chart.